Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a rainstorm which is going to be taking over much of the eastern United States. We're going to have some heavier rain near the Great Lakes and the Northeast, and then gradually as you move further to the south, the rain will kind of steady out a little bit. It'll be a little bit less extreme, but still we're dealing with a fairly large area of 1 to even as much as 5 or 6 inches of rainfall. We'll be covering that and giving you my rainfall forecast at the end of today's video, so make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end. Taking a look at the current National Weather Service page, you can see that we have some red flag warnings in effect for parts of Wyoming and Idaho, with some excessive heat warnings in parts of Idaho and Montana. We have a few excessive heat warnings also in parts of eastern Montana, and then we have some air quality alerts just kind of scattered around through the west and also into parts of Minnesota as well. We have some flood watches in parts of Arizona, New Mexico, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, so kind of just scattered all over the place. And then we have some heat advisories also for parts of the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. Other than that, we don't have many other watches or warnings currently in place. Yesterday, we had a high temperature in Death Valley, California of 119 degrees with a low temperature 35 miles west-southwest of Chote, Montana, where they got down to 32 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest rainfall report was tied between two areas in Wisconsin, Chilton, Wisconsin, and Two Rivers, Wisconsin. Both got 4.7 reported inches of rainfall, and there were no snowfall reports as of yesterday. Taking a look at the European model, we're going to time this out and kind of just give you an idea of what you should be expecting roughly over the next couple of days. This is going to be going from Friday through Tuesday, so this is going to be closer to a 4 or 5 day event depending on where you are, and it'll be even lingering in through parts of the southeast, maybe into Wednesday as well. So it'll be a fairly long-lasting type of event. Taking us through this afternoon, you can see that we're starting off with quite moderate or even heavy rainfall in parts of the Ohio Valley and parts of the mid-Mississippi River Valley. So we're dealing with some rather heavy rainfall, right around a quarter to even half an inch of rainfall per hour in some of those bands of heavier rain. And if we look at for later tonight, so this would be around 7 p.m. Central Time, 5 p.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern. You're looking at some of these heavier bands of rainfall into parts of Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. So we're dealing with a few pockets of rather steady and heavy rainfall in these areas. So rather rainy for some of these areas. We're dealing with, again, probably already 2 inches of rainfall that has fallen in these areas, and then you're going to add on maybe another inch or two through Saturday morning. So it's going to be, again, a fairly rainy pattern. We're going to be dealing with flash flooding in some of these areas. We're going to be talking about the flash flooding threat in just a couple of minutes. Looking through Saturday morning, you can see it sort of clears up a little bit. You can see the distinct band which we have. We have a low pressure which is right over southern Ontario, so that's where you're dealing with the heaviest amount of rainfall. And then we just have a cold front which is kind of just trailing behind it, somewhat like this. So we're dealing with our cold front trailing behind the low pressure, and that's just leading to a bit of storminess along that frontal system. So that's where we're dealing with these storms. Again, the strongest of the rain is going to be just around the low pressure, which again by this point is in southern Ontario. So the area around there is going to be where we're expecting the most rainfall or the heaviest rainfall. By Saturday, later in the morning, you can see that we're now starting to see this develop a little bit more. We're dealing with heavier rainfall to the south and also to the north. So we have a few pockets into the Tennessee Valley that are dealing with some heavier rainfall, and then into southern Canada and parts of the northeast. We're still dealing with some moderate or even heavy rainfall at times within these areas. Looking at kind of a wider view, because this does really get to become a rather big system. We're looking at this rain going all the way from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. So it is a fairly big storm by this point. So spreading this out a little bit, you can see that this storm is still up in upstate New York. You have that trailing front down to the south, and that's where we're dealing with a little bit of storminess. None of these storms are going to be awfully severe in parts of the southeast, so we're not expecting any sort of tornado outbreak or severe weather outbreak. It's mostly just going to be a big rainmaker And flash flooding would be definitely the biggest concern. Not really expecting too much in terms of hail or tornadoes or any sort of severe weather out of this event, but some thunder and lightning is definitely a possibility. Taking a look at for Saturday night into Sunday morning, you can see that we have along the East Coast still some stormy activity. We have some of those isolated storms down through the Southeast and the Tennessee Valley, with more of that steady, moderate rainfall up into the Northeast, especially in areas in the interior Northeast where we have very heavy rainfall amounts, especially when you do get into some of those bands of rainfall. So we're going to have maybe one or two different bands of rainfall that are going to be kind of the jackpot zones in terms of the rainfall. We're going to have very strong rain within those areas. You move maybe 10 or 15 miles to the south and you're no longer in that band of heavy rainfall. So there's going to be isolated bands of heavy rainfall. That's where you're going to get the most rainfall accumulation. And then you move to the south or to the north of that band, and you're really not dealing with a lot of rainfall after that. So you're going to need to be in that isolated band. That's going to be the area that's going to get the most rainfall. That's where we could be looking at amounts of getting up near 4 or 5 inches. On a kind of more broad scale, we're looking at 2 to 4 inches for most spots. Then by Saturday night into Sunday morning, still heavy rainfall due to that low pressure up in the Northeast. We're dealing with some scattered storms to the south. And those storms, by the way, are just going to kind of stick there. So kind of moving forward a little bit more. Here to be by Sunday morning, still a little bit of thunderstorm activity and shower activity in parts of the southeast. And you can see that's just going to continue day after day. So here to be by Sunday night into Monday morning through Monday night. Still raining in these areas, even into Tuesday morning. Still dealing with some isolated rainfall in through the coastal southeast. So you can see how this is going to especially stick around for parts of the southeast, but luckily it won't be raining at a heavy clip. It'll be raining very lightly for most of these areas. You'll get one or two bursts of heavier rainfall with a thunderstorm, and then maybe at the end you add up to closer to 1 to 2 inches of rainfall over that entire 3 or 4 day span. So in the southeast, it doesn't look like it's going to be as much of a flooding threat, mostly just of a nuisance type of rain where it's just going to kind of linger there, going to make it a little bit more miserable over those areas, but eventually that will go away, and we're not expecting too much flooding within that area because rain totals should only be around 1 or 2 inches. Taking a look at the rain totals from this model, you can see how we have that heavy band of 2 to even 4 inches of rainfall. That goes from Missouri and even into parts of Kansas, and that moves all the way east into parts of Maine. So you kind of have this east-west band of very strong and heavy rainfall. And again, that's going to be where we see some of that banding setup, where we see some of the heavy rain kind of just in a little slot of some of that heavier precipitation. And again, that's going to be the area that could maybe make a run at 4 or 5 or even a little bit higher rainfall total. So that's going to be where we might see a little bit of upside, where you could definitely get above 4 inches of rainfall. In the southeast, you can see how not as big of a deal in terms of the rainfall totals. You have a few spots, of course, that are getting up near 2 or 3 inches, but that is going to be spread out over 3 or 4 days. And the vast majority of these areas are looking at 1 to 2 inches or even less than an inch of rainfall, and spreading that out over 3 or 4 days shouldn't cause too much of an issue, although again, some isolated urban flooding especially, or areas that have poor drainage, they could definitely see some flooding, especially since the ground is already saturated within these areas. So it'll take a little bit less in order to cause some flash flooding. Looking at the Weather Prediction Center's chances of flash flooding, you can see that we have a 10 to 20% chance through the Ohio Valley for today. That's where we're dealing with the biggest area of 2 to 4 inches so far. And that would be for today. If we look at for tomorrow, you can see that slight risk moves into parts of the Northeast. So the majority of the Northeast covered under that slight 10 to 20% chance of flash flooding. You have that marginal risk, which goes down through the Tennessee Valley and into the southern plains. So it's a fairly wide area of potential flash flooding risk. And then if we look at for this would be, I believe, Saturday. You can see that marginal risk 5 to 10, or this will actually be for Sunday, that marginal 5 to 10% risk just kind of straggles the coast and then moves down through the Tennessee Valley. So that's generally where we're expecting the most flash flooding. Again, you can see how in the southeast, the values for flash flooding aren't going to be as high. We're not expecting as much of a threat of flash flooding in those areas, and that's going to be because most of that rain is going to be spread out, unlike in parts of the Ohio Valley and the interior northeast, where most of that rainfall will be coming in and maybe just a short time frame of 12 to 24 hours where you're getting that 2 to 4 inches. So because it's not going to be as spread out, parts of the northeast and Ohio Valley are definitely going to have those higher risks of flash flooding. Taking a look at my forecast for rainfall, this entire area from Friday, which would be for today, through Tuesday evening, I'm expecting at least some amount of rainfall within this entire light green area. And to get a little bit more specific, here's where I'm expecting 1 to 2 inches of rainfall. So pretty much everywhere from the Central Plains eastward, I'm expecting 1 to 2 inches of rainfall. There are some exceptions, such as parts of the Ozarks and into areas like southern Illinois and western Kentucky. I'm expecting just to be right around half an inch to an inch. Same with parts of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland, Northern Virginia, D.C., Delaware, parts of southern New Jersey. That's where I'm looking at probably, again, maybe near 3/4 of an inch to just under an inch of rainfall. The rest of the eastern United States expecting to be over 1 inch, so looking at 1 to 2 inches of rainfall at least. 2 to 3 inches, I have this in 3 different pockets. So I have one area down in Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Most of the models had some amount of elevated rainfall within that area, so I just wanted to leave out a little area in that dark green for 2 to 3 inches within that area, just because I think it is definitely a possibility, and who knows, we could even get above 3 inches in some of those spots. That is definitely a possibility, that we could maybe even make a run up near 3.5 inches of rainfall in some of those spots. Taking a look at that second region, which is in Kansas, Missouri, and Illinois, you've seen that on most of the models we did have a elevated amount of rainfall within that area. Even some of the models had that near 4 or 5 inches within that area. Some of that rainfall is already going on, so I am including some of that into this forecast. But overall, it looks like you'll maybe get another 2 to 3 inches at least within these areas. And then also another region near Lake Erie, and then also up near Lake Ontario, in through parts of northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire, and central Maine. That's where I'm looking at 2 to 3 inches of rainfall. And that's where we could be seeing some banding setting up, where we could be seeing maybe even more than 3 inches of rainfall. And here's the areas where I'm thinking 3 to 5 inches. Who knows, an isolated 5+ inch report is definitely possible. And I have one area for northern Missouri. Most of the models have a heavy band of rainfall within that area fairly consistently. So I want to put it in my forecast for parts of southwestern New York as well as northern Vermont and some of the surrounding areas. That's where I'm looking at 3+ inches of rainfall. Of course, some other areas in the interior northeast might make it up near 2.5 inches of rainfall, maybe even up near 3 inches of rainfall. But on a more widespread level, these are the 3 areas that I would highlight for the highest chance of being above 3 inches. And of course, we could see some areas outside of there get more than 3 inches out of this event. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.